Great. Do you want me to just go?
Yeah, go
All
for
right.
it.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time zone you're in right now. My name is Geneva Blackmer. I'm a Global Council Trustee for URI North America. I am also a board member for the Interfaith Center at Miami University, CC. So I'm very happy to welcome you into this space on behalf of both of these organizations. For those who maybe don't know a lot about URI and the Interfaith Center, URI is the United Religions Initiative. It's a global grassroots interfaith network that cultivates peace and justice by engaging people to bridge religious and cultural differences and work together for the good of their communities and the world. This mission is implemented through local and global initiatives that build the capacity of our member groups and organizations called cooperation circles to engage in community action. The Interfaith Center at Miami University is a cooperation circle of URI that seeks to unify people through relationship building, dialogue, and social action. It aims to achieve this mission by offering a welcoming space, physically and virtually, for our local and global communities through engagement and education, and by inspiring social action in order to build a more just and equitable society. And this program is funded in part by Interfaith America's Vote is Sacred grant, which is a national nonpartisan civic engagement initiative that seeks to inform and equip citizens with the practical steps needed to secure the right to vote for all Americans. And we hope that you can utilize some of the strategies presented here today to help combat voter suppression in your communities. So I'm going to turn it over now to Tahil, who is the regional coordinator for URI North America, to give you a short introduction to community organizing before we begin with the panelists.
Thanks so much, Geneva. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Tahil Sharma, and I'm the regional coordinator for North America at the United Religions Initiative, which is the world's largest grassroots interfaith network of grassroots organizations. As a part of this conversation today, our main emphasis is this idea of community organizing. Oftentimes, we don't necessarily see it from the lens of a religious, spiritual, or interfaith perspective. But what we come to realize at its core is that community organizing is basically the root of what we do as a part of the interfaith movement as well. And it's very much a part of the bloodline of many of our faith communities that are focused on the work of justice and equity. The basic idea of community organizing is that we are bringing individuals together across differences to be able to focus on a common problem and to be able to use our resources, our energy, and our skills to be able to fix that problem. And with a definition like that, which is not really intentionally being vague, that's a thing that we all do in our communities, whether those communities are religiously or spiritually oriented, or whether they're oriented around a specific identity that we identify with. And it's important for us to be able to think about, well, if we're talking about something as easy as community organizing, why do we need to have an event about it? Well, the fact of the matter is community organizing needs to take an approach that oftentimes is not just felt by, an immediate core group of people. The ripples that we're trying to create for positive social change have to impact communities outside of your own. And I want to kind of start off with this sort of quote that is mentioned by a Black Lives Matter co-founder, Alicia Garza. The mission and purpose of organizing is to build power. Without power, we are unable to change conditions in our communities that hurt us. A movement is successful if it transforms the dynamics of relationships of power. And that's a very core concept that we're trying to address here when thinking about this idea of community organizing. We all have to start small in the communities that we come from, but we also have to think about how can that work expand to include more communities, to be more representative, to be more equitable, and most importantly, to try to make some change not just happen across the street. When we're thinking about positive social change across our faith traditions, we're invited always to bring our faith to the public square, to fight for those who are least represented and who are most oppressed. And we're often having to think about the ways that we need to make sure that we have this trajectory shift in our communities. Sometimes these things don't happen because of political disagreements, moral disagreements, capacity, an inability to fundraise to do some things, a lack of energy of individuals and communities to be able to engage in something because they are already burning out. But we're here to actually talk about some stories and some practical ways for you all to leave this space thinking of community organizing from a values-driven place so that you have the opportunity to engage with it in a new way in the communities that you come from. So with that, I'll pass it back to Geneva.
Thank you so much. So our first speaker is going to be Ann Bailey with she is the leader of the Eradicating Systemic Poverty team at Oxford Presbyterian Church. And for sake of time, we're going to put everyone's full bios in the chat. So I'm going to do that now so you can learn a little bit more about her. And I'm just going to hand it over to you, Ann.
All right, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can, Ann.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you all for being here today. And I will go back in time just a little bit to give you some background and perspective. In the end of 2019, I was co-chair of our church, Oxford Presbyterian, in Oxford, Ohio, just since some of you are not from this area. And our committee, the Mission and Outreach Committee, decided to apply to become a Matthew 25 congregation. And we submitted the application to Presbyterian Church USA. It was not a lengthy application. We were approved primarily because we were doing community service work outside the walls of our stone church already, and because we had ideas of more work that we wanted to do. We were asked, once we were approved, if we would choose a focus or a mission. And very quickly, we said, yes, we would like to choose as our focus eradicating systemic poverty, which seems pretty ambitious. But we regarded it not as an end product, but rather as a process we would work on over time and try to achieve. Simultaneously, at this very same time, our congregation received a fairly substantial grant from the Myrtle Foundation, again, under the auspices of the Presbyterian Church USA. And we were asked to spend time in focus groups and in retreats, setting ourselves some fairly worthy goals for our church, once again, beyond the walls of the sanctuary and the Sunday school classrooms, where we could interact and interface with the community on matters of peace and justice for all people, other than those in our own congregation. After many months of deliberation and conversation, not only within the church itself, but in grocery stores and hair salons and ball games, we came up with two vital things we wanted to work on. One was the one we'd already chosen, eradicating systemic poverty. And the other was a relatively easy decision in this era, and that was, let's focus on the environment. And so as our second mission, we chose caring for creation. We found right away that these two intersected very dramatically. That is, the people who were most likely to be affected and suffering from poverty were those people who were most likely to be affected from environmental strife, air pollution, water pollution, inner city crowding, poor schools, soil pollution, drought. So right away, our two areas of focus in our congregation came together, and we worked together in two different teams. I'm here to tell you just a little bit about the Eradicating Systemic Poverty team. I volunteered to be team leader of this group primarily because in my former life, I was a university professor at Miami, and my area of research and teaching was family and child poverty. Not that I knew it all, but I had a little bit of background that I wasn't ready to let go of yet. So I held on to that, but I had a wonderful team of 8 to 10 people that I worked with at the beginning and continue to work with today. How we got started, we just started meeting and began to gather and read a lot of research. Why are people in the United States of America poor? We're considered a wealthy country. So we studied poverty, we read research, we read about the programs that have been tried, we've read about the programs that work and those that didn't work. We made a long list of the agencies and governmental units in our immediate community and the county at large to determine who is working on the issue of poverty right now, what are they doing, how might we be a part of that larger movement. As you recall, in that early, 2020 era, this was the time of COVID. So after contacting the agencies, we thought it would be very helpful to meet with the directors, the leaders of government units and social service agencies to find out one-on-one in conversation how we could be a part of what they were doing, and maybe they could give us some ideas of how a grassroots citizen group could contribute to a broader effort. So we had many Zoom meetings over less than a year, I'd say a half a year. We had many Zoom meetings with those agencies and community leaders. We then decided it was time to bring people together in a face-to-face kind of setting. We were beginning to move out of the issue of confinement with COVID. So we held a community-wide meeting at our church has a community meeting room. We held a community-wide Bridges Out of Poverty training meeting, to which we invited many members of the social agencies we'd worked with, government members, members of a cross-section of the faith community, just plain interested people who cared about the issue of poverty. This was an all-day meeting where, once again, we talked about why are people poor, what are some of the things we can do about this issue in our country. 6 months later, we had a follow-up meeting of many of these same participants, and we asked the question, what would Oxford look like if there were no poverty? Now, before I go any further, I realize I did not give you what I meant to give you in the beginning, and that is, what do we mean by systemic poverty? Systemic poverty refers to the economic exploitation of people who are poor through laws, policies, practices, and systems that perpetuate their impoverished status. For example, zoning laws that require that single-family homes be built on plots of land that could logically and efficiently house multifamily structures and be much more efficient. Another example might be banking regulations that say that loans with low interest can only be made to certain households, or the checking and savings accounts can only be opened by some people. And those people often end up getting high interest payday loans because they can't get them at low interest loans at other places. There are many examples of systemic change that need to be addressed and that sometimes are hard to address unless you have a large effort. That's what we mean by systemic, bringing about systemic change. Going back to the scenario I'm wanting to share with you, when we had our follow-up meeting, we found there were two primary issues in Oxford. One was food insecurity, which we were partly addressing at the time. The second was housing insecurity, the lack of low-cost housing for our citizens, and no program at all at that time for meeting the needs of homeless people. This is remaining to be it is an existing problem that we will be continuing to work on. We as a follow-up to both of these issues, or as partial remedies, one of our team members on the Eradicating Systemic Poverty team is a nutrition and dietetics professor at Miami. And right at the beginning of our team formation, she and her dietetics students conducted a food insecurity survey in Oxford, and soon thereafter started conducting nutrition and food, economical food preparation classes at our local food pantry and at a couple other locations in Oxford that would serve the low-income community. These have continued over time. And in part, this has been made possible because we are operating under not a large grant, but we are operating under a grant that allows us to pay for these classes to be conducted. So part of what I'm saying is this grassroots movement does need some funding to make itself viable, in part. We also later on conducted a housing forum during which we looked at the issue of affordable housing, transitional housing, and homelessness. Following that, our city has taken action, and in part, I think it's taken action because there have been voices at City Council among members of the community, some of whom are sitting in on this meeting right now because I see their faces, asking the city to do more to bring affordable housing to Oxford. The city is now purchasing land that will be community owned. The city has hired a nonprofit corporation that will be building houses that will be more affordable. This is not a huge program, but it's one step in the right direction. Our team also coordinated with the Legal Aid Society of Southwest Ohio and the city of Oxford a renters' rights and responsibilities meeting one evening. The people who attended were mostly low-income renters who needed and wanted to know, all right, if I don't pay, if my landlord doesn't do what I've asked him to do, like turn on the heat, do I have a right to withhold my rent? No, you don't have a right to withhold your rent. You'll be evicted. So the news wasn't always good, but they began to learn how they would deal with the problems that tenants often experience and do not know what the law says they can or cannot do. And we're put in touch with attorneys that would handle their issues at no cost to them. We had enough money to hire a college student as an intern, and she set up a website for us that communicates what we do, I should say. And more recently, one of the really delightful and interesting and informed things we've done is to partner with a new group fairly new group in Oxford, the Oxford Homeless Network. And together our team, the Eradicating Systemic Poverty team, and the Oxford Homeless Network, who several of its members are with us right now as I speak, are bringing together a broad group, across the board group of citizens from many different sectors the government sector, the healthcare sector, the social service sector, throughout the community, including the police department, to begin to say, we have homeless people here. You may not see them. They are not very visible, but we have a situation that needs to be addressed in our community. So this is a little bit of what has gone on. Now, what are our individual church members doing? Well, we volunteer, for example, at our local food pantry. We donate money to the Family Resource Center. We like to think we're not the proverbial church group that just gives out money and puts on Band-Aids, but we do, because sometimes a wound is there and it's a really bad wound and we need to put a Band-Aid on it so it can heal. An example of something we've tried to do ever since our existence is, if somebody is about to be evicted because they can't pay their rent or their utility bill, then we give money, we find money. There is money out there, and we make sure that person does not join the ranks of the homeless if we can do anything about it. And it's not getting at the root. It's not getting at the systemic problem, which is low-wage jobs, but at least it's keeping someone in their house for yet another month. So this gives you a little bit of an idea about getting a grant from somewhere to begin a process and bring people together who know other people, and moving in what I hope is the process of eradicating systemic poverty.
Thank you so much, Anne. There we go. Okay, so our second speaker, I'm going to put his biography in the chat. There we go. Is Vasu Bandhu, who is the interfaith manager at the Arizona Faith Network. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Geneva. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm greeting you from Mexico City. I'm working for Arizona Faith Network, but right now I'm in Mexico with the Buddhist community. I will share with you what we do in Arizona Faith Network. I will share with you my screen. And please let me know if you can see my screen. Okay, thank you. Arizona Faith Network is an interfaith organization focused on connecting people from diverse religions for the state of Arizona. So we are dedicated to bring people together, and we promote peace and understanding through interfaith education and dialogue. I'm serving Arizona Faith Network as the interfaith manager. Also, we want to focus on the heal of the world to collaborative social action. So we are very focused on social action oriented. In other words, we are people of faith who come together for the common good in the state of Arizona. So let me share with you how it started this movement in Arizona. In 1946, it started with the Arizona Council of Churches. In 1968, with the Arizona Ecumenical Council. And in 2015, with the Arizona Faith Network. So part of the work that we do is to make a difference in our society. We focus to get people involved in organized people of faith through diverse committees, hunger and housing, interfaith dialogue, racial justice, voting rights, criminal justice, and also for the environment. Part of the work that we do is also to connecting people online. So we create the Arizona Faith Forum, which is a platform where people could share what is happening in the state and in the diverse religions. So we are having also partnership with great organizations as the United Religions Initiative, Religions for Peace, and others. Also, we are sharing everything through our newsletter for keeping the people in the community communicate and connected. So this is part of our staff in Arizona Faith Network. So part of the organization that we do is to connecting people in person, but also online. Personally, it has been very inspired to work for Arizona Faith Network. Also because recently we have been working to sponsor, to facilitate the connection with a bill for Arizona to helping the faith communities to get access for security. So let me share with you a quick video which explain a little bit more about what we do for this bill.
Shooting at a synagogue in Pittsburgh. A gunman opens fire at a church in Texas. The number of violent incidents at sanctuaries across the country has caught the attention of religious leaders in Arizona.
He alone is my refuge and my place of safety.
Aubrey Barnwell is the pastor of the First New Life Church in Phoenix. He says churchgoers shouldn't have to look over their shoulder or be worried about their safety when they come to services on Sunday.
It impacts the congregation because now you're looking around trying to make sure that you're in a safe place, you're on edge.
In an effort to help protect congregations across the state, Arizona lawmakers are considering a bill, SB 1713, that would provide $5 million in funding to enhance security at churches, temples, and mosques.
It's something that we can really be proud of.
Rabbi Bonnie Scharfman has helped lead the push to provide more security funding for religious groups. She said if the bill passes, religious institutions would be eligible for up to $100,000 each.
It definitely means things like monitoring, extra cameras. It could be some physical changes to how one accesses our different buildings.
It's possible the money could also be used to provide off-duty police officers at Sunday services and high holidays.
No evil will conquer you.
Pastor Barnwell says the state funding would help smaller churches and religious groups the most because they're the ones unable to afford any additional security.
And so this bill will help to provide the things that will help people feel secure and release and feel like it's a place of peace and security, a place of refuge.
The bill to provide more security funding for religious institutions has now been rolled into the state budget process. Whether it gets approved in the final budget, we'll keep you posted. Jason Berry for Arizona's Family.
So this is part of the work that we do in Arizona Faith Network. And community organizing is central for us. We are people from diverse religions. In my case, I serve the Buddhist community. And we are people from diverse religions for this common good in Arizona. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be today together and to exchange the experiences and to exchange the best practices. So we together as global and national interfaith movement, we can help each other. Thank you so much, Tahil and Yaniv.
Thank you so much, Vasu. So our third and final speaker will be Adam Overton, who is a faith-rooted organizer from CLU, Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Adam. Thinking to unmute. Oh, it's not allowing you to. What about now?
There we go. Nice fresh breath of air and Zoom air. Nice to meet all y'all. Thank you so much to Tahil and Geneva for having me here. Anne and Vasu, what an incredible privilege to hear about y'all's amazing work. My name's Adam Overton. My pronouns are he and they. I am as they mentioned, a faith-rooted organizer with CLU, Clergy and Laity United for economic justice. We're in LA County and Orange County in Southern California. And my work in particular is working with our interfaith community in throughout Orange County. I'm going to go ahead and just show you some slides for a minute to give you a sense of what, I need my screen share enabled.
Should be good.
There we go. Thanks so much. So I'm going to just give folks a sense of history of our organization, and then, the work that we are engaged in, and then if there's time, I'll talk a little bit about how we actually organize. So our mission at CLU is to educate, organize, and mobilize the faith community to accompany workers and their families in their struggle for good jobs, dignity, and justice. And so a little bit about our organization. So we were founded in, I believe, 1995 or 1996 by a group of labor leaders in Los Angeles and faith leaders. One of the primary co-founders of our organization was Reverend James Lawson, Jr., who many of you may know as one of the architects of the nonviolent movement of America during the Civil Rights Movement. His story in a nutshell is that in the early 1950s, he went on a church mission to India, and specifically while was there, went to study with the folks who had worked with Gandhi to help liberate India from England. When he returned in the mid 50s to go to become a pastor, and so he was going to school in Ohio. His professor happened to invite Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to visit and introduce them. And Martin Luther King Jr. told him, "You need to move to the South immediately." And so he did. He moved to Nashville, Tennessee, where he proceeded to teach the spirituality, the principles, the tactics, the strategies of nonviolence and of ahimsa, soul force, to hundreds, if not thousands, of young Black students and others, including the former Congressman John Lewis and Diane Nash and others. With those folks, he ended up organizing with them the lunch counter sit-ins in Nashville, which desegregated downtown Nashville, and then moved those throughout the Southeast in similar campaigns. He helped organize bus boycotts, among other things, and a variety of other things. But the way that he, and he's still alive. I just saw him yesterday. He's about 95 or 96, a real living legend. But he kind of says the seed for CLU really came in 1968, and he was invited for the first time to work with a union, the Memphis, who were the Memphis sanitation workers, who went on strike for about 3 months in the winter and refused to collect the trash because of a whole slew of injustices that were happening at work. During this fight, as he was invited to really help shape the struggle to win, he realized that this was kind of ground zero for community organizing, for building a mass movement of community members, people at the bottom rising up, and developing their leadership, or as in CLU and in the faith community, unleashing that spark of seeing, and then unleashing that spark of God, that spark of life within them, and learning how to work collectively to fight for our common causes. And he says that he and King and others around that time had started to really realize that this was after the Civil Rights Act had been passed, the Voting Rights Act. And in both cases, despite those being, really revolutionary achievements, they had begun to realize that folks in this country, especially poor folks of color and even poor white folks, were not going to truly be free unless they could be liberated from what Reverend Lawson called plantation capitalism. And so with that, for the following decades, Reverend Lawson continued working specifically with the labor community and organizing faith community around their fights for living wages, for health care, for respect on the jobs, for safe workplaces, etc. In the 1970s, I believe he moved to Los Angeles to be the pastor of Holman United Methodist Church, which is a little west of USC, and really served as a mentor to labor leaders throughout Los Angeles and Southern California. So in the mid 1990s, there was a living wage campaign that was going on with Unite Here, Local 11, and some other groups, and there had already been a handful of faith leaders who'd been involved, and so he brought them together, and they formed CLU, Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. And just here are a couple kind of quotes that kind of guide me in understanding the work and why we do the work that we do, and why it's so connected to labor and the thing and whatnot. So with Gandhi, he said poverty is the worst form of violence. And then Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, there's a kind of strangulation in the air. In our society, it is murder psychologically to deprive a person of a job or an income. You are in substance saying to that person that they have no right to exist. You are in a real way depriving them of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, denying in their case the very creed of their society. And so a little bit about just what our work actually looks like. As I mentioned, in the mid 90s, our work really was founded around labor, economic justice, and working with all sorts of different kinds of workers. In the 2000s, however, it expanded into doing immigrant rights work. And that was, from what I understand, that was because in the 2000s in California, there was a really racist governor and a number of really racist anti-immigrant propositions and laws. And the folks who ended up leading that fight, at least in Los Angeles, were the labor unions, because their workers were the ones who were being targeted by these racist laws. And so with that, they pulled, CLU into that with them, into this work. So our second pillar continues to be working around immigrant rights. And then finally, our third pillar has become racial justice. And ever since the creation of the movement for Black Lives about 10 years ago, CLU has been deeply plugged in to that work, primarily in Los Angeles. And one of our primary faith-rooted organizers is a fellow named Pastor Q Jean-Marie, and he's also a leader in the BLM chapter in Los Angeles, and so has kept CLU plugged in. He has helped organize our Black Jewish Justice Alliance, which has a number of rabbis, plus a number of collaboration with Black pastors from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, to come together and deal with issues around checking the sheriff, around police shootings, and things like that. So we have those kind of three pillars, and they look like a number of things, like this memorial for George Floyd after he was lynched by the police, where we gathered about 100 people and a number of faith leaders, unannounced and unpermitted, on the grassy area outside of on the property of the Orange County Sheriff's Department. This was also then followed by a procession where we had this empty coffin. We did a procession up to Los Angeles, where we met with several other processions from the region for a Black Lives Matter rally and protest that shut down an intersection downtown in downtown LA. Just some of the different kinds of folks that we work with, without getting too deep into any of the campaigns, is we work with a lot with healthcare workers, hospital workers, especially folks that were, going through COVID without the appropriate equipment and PPE. We work with them constantly on helping them in so many different ways to try and keep our communities safe and healthy, and yet they are so often positioned against very, very, corporations and CEOs who really are not putting their safety or the care of the patients first in front of profits. We also, we worked on a number of campaigns with them. We've been working for a couple years with a number of sheet metal workers who have been doing not only protesting the horrible conditions within their factory, but also fighting the horrible contamination in the air and the water that's happening both inside their factory and outside into the community. We actually helped them for about a week. They were carrying air quality monitors inside their factory without telling their managers. We walked outside with them in solidarity, collecting air quality measurements from the surrounding community, both to see what the leakage was, and also to provide a baseline. And so we had faith community from various different congregations. We've worked with, bus drivers. We gathered, right before the very contentious, presidential election, which we, all feared could turn violent in some ways. We went to the Honda Center where the Ducks play, but had been turned into the largest voting center in Orange County. We went there to bless the vote and to have a brief nonviolence training that we broadcast online, and so on and so forth, working with the Muslim community in a variety of ways. And then also in terms of our racial justice work, we've been involved with trying to help the Orange County community commemorate the lives of people who have been murdered by police unjustly. And to challenge the district attorney who refuses to prosecute any police officers who have murdered folks. And we've also worked with folks who are incarcerated and organizing inside to get hot food served, to stop getting 3 moldy bologna sandwiches a day for 2 years. We've had a number of folks from varieties of faith communities. And then kind of tying all this together, one of my favorites was last year. We did a community iftar led by some amazing folks who are involved in our faith-rooted organizing cohort. And in this, we actually brought together leaders and organizers from all of these different communities. We brought them together, folks who are organizing in the Muslim community, folks from the anti-racist and abolitionist communities, folks from organizing in the labor community and interfaith justice communities, to ensure that these folks, it's like these folks need to know each other. They're all brilliant. They're doing incredible work, but they're, how is it that these brilliant folks are not combining forces and not working together? So this was a really powerful moment and an opportunity to bring them together. So anyways, maybe I'll just leave it there. And if there's more chance to talk about anything else, I'd be happy to. The main thing I would say is that with our organizing, it really is, it's relational. It's all about building, what we call intimate solidarity. We go one by one. We don't focus on organizing entire congregations. We go and we identify who's the 1 or 2 or 3 people who are most likely whose hearts break for these issues? Who are the folks who, can we get in there and talk to folks and make them and help them realize that just handing out food, burritos and soup is absolutely necessary, because we have this humanitarian crisis of hunger right in front of us. But that what is your, I like to ask, what is your 5 to 10 year plan to never have to hand out food? And people, the faith community never has an answer for that. And that's why, we then have to educate them. Look, if you really want to end hunger, if you really want to get unhoused out of their cars, off the street, etc., we have to work with folks who are struggling to to never have to have poverty wages again. We have to fight with them to get real affordable housing in our communities. And while that may be scary to go and confront, the folks who are profiting off these kinds of systems, we have to do it. And it's part of our faith traditions, the history of our faith, the history of the values that we have to confront them, up to and including civil disobedience and risking arrest. And in fact, I'll just end with this, that we are in the process right now of working with the Hospitality Workers Union. They have over 100 contracts that are expiring at the same time on June 30th between Orange County, Los Angeles, and some parts of I believe, Phoenix and Arizona. Over 100 contracts expiring at exactly the same time, so that on July 1st, we're likely to have 17,000 hospitality workers going on strike. They have challenged the faith community to, in these areas, to recruit over 100 faith community who are ready to risk arrest with them. And so we're working on that with them right now. So anyways, I'll pass it back. I'm sorry if I took too long.
Thank you so much, Adam. And thank you to all of our speakers. We are going to, I guess, move into the Q&A now. We already have a couple questions that have come through in the chat. The first one looks like it is for Anne from Shelley Gordon. How did the church in Oxford identify people who were vulnerable to becoming unhoused? Were they only congregants or outside their faith community?
I am unmuting myself here. That is a very good question. And well, first of all, as you would guess, we work closely with agencies that themselves have clients that they have relationships with. Now, let's say I talk to the director of our local family resource center. I know her, and she could say to me, yes, I have 6, let's say right now, 6 homeless clients. However, confidentiality regulations will not let me give you their names. And since they may be living in a car or with a friend or in a tent somewhere, they really don't have an address. So as a volunteer group, I don't really have access to names, but I have access to the agency personnel that work one-on-one with clients and receive help. And that's probably one of the biggest dilemmas, because while I might like to sit down and have a cup of coffee or just sit down, period, and not have anything with someone who might be homeless, there are regulations that would prohibit the service directors from giving me the kind of information I need. So we work kind of on the edges, if I can put it that way. We know there are people who are homeless. It's just that there are restrictions on names that can be shared. I don't know if that answers the question very, very well.
Thank you, Anne. Who was that? Was from Shelley. Shelley, did that answer your question, or did you have a follow-up? She said yes. Okay. The next question is from Alfred, and he's wondering, are there, and I believe this is directed at any of the panelists, are there any justice-related interfaith retreats or conferences that any of the speakers would like to share with the audience, or marches, national marches? Does anyone? No, no one has anything. I can't tell if I need to ask you to unmute. Okay, there we go.
There's a peace pentagon in Independence, Virginia, and Tahil is familiar and actually going to be there, I think. Maybe he should speak to that action. We're going to be there on July 15th. And it's, anyway, it's a focused event, but they're an ongoing organization and welcome support. They've developed the campus and community quite a bit and so on. So Tahil, would you feel comfortable speaking about the peace effort that's going to be going on there?
Thank you for that, Carol. Honestly, I cannot, only because I'm still learning more information about it, and I am trying to make sure that my supervisor says it's okay that I can go. I'm not confirmed as yet. So yeah, I just want to make sure that there's that clarity, just because it's an exciting gathering to be able to address, a lot of community concerns that are taking place in the area of Independence, Virginia, to states like North Carolina and Tennessee. And there are these conversations that are coming together about addressing some major issues. And the Oracle Institute is a cooperation circle within the URI network that is partnering with other URI colleagues and other communities to make this work happen. So it's good to be able to see that happening on so many different fronts in so many different parts of the country. But I know, Vasu, did you want to answer the question that was asked specifically? Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Tahil. Yes, of course. For example, in the state of Arizona with Arizona Faith Network, I will share with you our calendar with all the activities, and everything is focused on social justice. This for the state of Arizona, but also in the global community. For example, we are having the Parliament of the World Religions focus on human rights this August 14th. So I will share also in the chat that. Thank you, Tahil.
Thank you, Vasu. Reverend Carolyn Wilkins, you have a question?
No, I wanted to share something that we're doing.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm involved with Faith in Action, and I'm part of an organization here I'm in New Mexico Cafe, and we're having a regional training June 15th through the 17th, which is open to all backgrounds, and we have a particular thing for faith programs. And it's a regional leadership training for clergy leaders and for people from the congregations. So I can put my email in the information and can send you more information on it. But we'd love to have you join us. And in fact, it's interesting that we had a program yesterday, and there were a couple of people here today that were in that program. So we're cross-linking. Vasu and I are in an interfaith group together. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing.
So good seeing you, Reverend Carolyn.
Yes. Hi, Tahil.
Carol Landis, do you have a question or additional comment?
Well, it's a comment and a question. Excuse me, I'm I'm a climate change educator, retired teacher, and grandmother. And I am very concerned about the existential crises of both climate change, which will also affect many of the underserved and poorly represented, as well as the nuclear armament continuation, which has been decried by the International Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, but for which our government still spends money to refurbish our already existing nuclear weapons. And I know this is a huge issue. When someone mentioned what is your 5 to 10 year plan, the 10-year plan for me is the deadline that we're approaching, a possible tipping point about climate and all of the impacts that will have. And I feel like it would be very helpful. I hope to encourage faith groups. I'm a member of the board of the Green Interfaith Network, and I'm also participating in the URI locally. But we need to have our faith members and leaders speak out about these two very pressing issues. We can't remain silent, and our government seems not to hear us very well. If we always rely on a vote, and I'm without getting too political, represent us as another way of thinking about how our system is broken. The voting isn't going to make a change until the lobbyists are changed or something. So somehow I think we have to appeal to the moral, ethical stance and raise our voices as a group across the board to say this is not good enough. That's it.
Thank you for that. Did anyone on the panel have anything to respond or add to that comment?
There was something I wanted to say, and
Okay.
In complement to and in response to what Carol just said. This is actually one of the biggest things that we have to invite faith communities and interfaith communities to think about in this day and age. And it's this idea of the engagement with moral urgency. And I think the framing that that's often put on it is this idea that what we are doing is political and it is inherently partisan. And I think oftentimes we have to look at the issues for what they are and just address them because they are urgent issues. If people try to put a political tinge on what we do, we can't help that situation. But what ultimately much of what we're talking about today is actually often seen as being very liberal, very progressive, and some will call it far-fetched and call it, derogatory names. But inevitably, we are living into our traditions saying that we are alleviating the impoverished, we are alleviating the marginalized, and that's what we're sticking to. But what we also have to be very intentional about is some of the nature of this work has to be political. We are having to ask legislators to change things. We are asking lobbyists to get out of the way because it's not just their way that gets to win the game. We have to make people pay attention to the power that they should have and empower them to do things like vote and hold their elected officials accountable. And that work of politics is just inevitable. We can't step away from that because that has to be a part of what we do. And the interfaith movement is slowly evolving into this form of engagement that we can't separate ourselves from. It involves all of us and all of our faith communities to be responsible to this, responsible to our congregants, and responsible to everything that happens outside of our sanctuaries. One thing that I wanted to, just before we wrap up, is I do have a quick poll that I'd like folks to fill out. It's anonymous, so you can answer as honestly as you'd like to. But there are just 3 questions that are just single choice that we'd like you to answer, just to help inform us about how we curate and continue to host events here at URI North America. So I'll be starting that poll right now and giving you all about 2 minutes or so to just fill it out. It'd just be really great to get your feedback. yeah, so not to make the space silent, but we're hoping and inviting you all will fill out this questionnaire. And as you all are filling in the questions, I do want to share my gratitude with Anne, Vasu, Adam. Thank you all so much for bringing in the wisdom that you did into the space. It's helpful to bring these sort of perspectives from the space of storytelling and being able to think about how your communities have gone from their roots into becoming something that is profoundly helpful to local communities. We're very thankful to you, Geneva, for helping to facilitate the space and having these folks come together. And we're really thankful for everyone in the room today for having you all share your time with us, and also for those of you that have been sharing your resources in the chat and in the space today. We're really thankful for that as well. And we're just, we'll leave another 30 seconds or so to fill things out. About half of you have filled things in, or a little over half. But again, thank you all on behalf of URI North America and on behalf of just the work that you all are doing to really make a positive difference. We greatly appreciate it. We will be more than welcome to connect with some of you who may be interested in trying to participate in more events like this, or trying to get more trainings and more understandings of how to do community organizing work. So we're looking forward to connecting with you in the future, and we'd like to say thanks again. Take care.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great morning, afternoon, or evening.
Thank you so much. What a privilege.